Hey folks, and welcome to my guide to Owlweaving, or Balance Affinity for Restoration Druids. This guide will be focused on getting the most amount of damage out of this talent, covering what it is, the talents, the rotation, the best stats, trinkets, enchants, legendaries, and covenants. It will not be looking at healing, but options that work for both healing and damage dealing will be considered. If you want to know why DPS is important for a healer and how to get started, check out my two-part guide up here. For now though, let's get started. So what is Balance Affinity? It's a talent in your level 30 row. This talent provides numerous things. A 5-yard range increase on all abilities including heals, Typhoon, a short range AoE tonal knockback, Moonkin form, a new form that increases your armor. In this form, the only heal you can cast is Regrowth, but you can cast Sunfire, Moonfire and Wrath, as well as being required to cast the following two new spells: Starfire, an arcane single target cast time spell with AoE cleave component, and Star Surge, an arcane single target cast time spell with a 10-second cooldown that hits hard and busts any active eclipses. And of course, that leads to the passive eclipse mechanic. This adds numbers next to your Wrath and Starfire, and if you cast two of these spells, you'll enter an eclipse for the opposite spell, increasing their damage for the 10-second window. When this window ends, you will only be able to trigger the eclipse for the spell opposite the one that you were just in. Note that you can trigger eclipses outside of Moonkin form. For example, if you cast two Wraths, you can enter a lunar eclipse even if you're not in Moonkin form. With regard to other talents, generally the only important one for damage is Heart of the Wild. This 5-minute cooldown, or less with conduits, lasts for 45 seconds and increases the damage of all of your spells by 30%, and it makes Star Surge instant cast. As Star Surge is so powerful, you want to have all possible 5 instant cast Star Surges used in this window. For other talents, when balancing between healing and damage, usually time efficient talents are the better ones, like Scenario and Ward, but you should prioritise these for what heals best in your current scenario. With only 6 DPS abilities and then a Covenant ability, the Owlweaving rotation is fairly straightforward. To begin with, you almost always want to be in Moonkin form. Only Sunfire and Moonfire lose nothing by being in humanoid form. Shifting will cost you a global cooldown, except when using Heart of the Wild, which will shift you automatically. The first thing to do is cast Moonfire and Sunfire, or Sunfire first if there are more than 2 targets, and you'll want to maintain these at all times, on all targets. These do not even require Moonkin form, so if you are limited on time to deal damage, focus solely on these. Once these are up, now is the time to use cooldowns, starting with Heart of the Wild and Racials, before following up with your Covenant abilities such as Convoke the Spirits to the Night Fae. You want to use these as often as possible unless required for healing. Obviously there may be time when you need to hold cooldowns, if so, just skip to the core rotation. A special note about Convoke the Spirits: when used in Moonkin form it can cast Starfall, an AoE aura around you that ignores large target caps. These deal a lot of damage and makes Convoke best used on AoE parts of the fight when used for damage. This interaction is part of the reason why Owlweaving is preferred over Catweaving. For your core rotation, use Star Surge when it is up, especially during Heart of the Wild when you need to fit in all 5 instant casts, and then use Starfire if any of the following are true. There is more than one target, you are in a lunar eclipse, or your next eclipse is a solar eclipse. This means at the start of a single target fight, you want to start with Starfire to trigger the solar eclipse. Otherwise, cast Wrath. In practice, the rotation is simply maintain Moonfire and Sunfire, use Star Surge on cooldown, and keep casting Starfire or Wrath until you trigger the eclipse for the other, then swap to that spell. For stats, Mastery is a no-go. It offers no DPS benefit. Intellect is your best stat, followed by Haste, Crit, and then Versatility. If the fight length is very short, Haste loses some benefit. The best way to tell for yourself is to go sim your stat weights. Simming will be taught at the end of this video. For trinkets, you often have to choose between the best for damage and the best for balancing damage and healing. The best DPS trinkets always follow the same pattern. They have passive intellect, and some form of proc or trigger that deals raw damage. This is because these trinkets are designed for damage dealers and are weighed so that the proc is competitive for them. Since DPS players gain a greater DPS benefit from stats than healers, these procs are powerful for healers. Imagine a proc gives you 100 intellect. If a DPS player can turn this 100 intellect into 100 damage, a healer will only be able to turn it into 40 or so. However, if a proc deals 100 damage directly, it will also deal that 100 damage for a healer. If you want a healthy balanced trinket, raw intellect with procs for secondary stats are the best, as long as they are not mastery. For enchants, you'll always want haste on rings as well as any sockets, as well as intellect on bracers. For a weapon enchant, Sinful Revelations is the best for damage, but it offers no healing benefit, while Celestial Guidance is the best for healing and the second best for damage. For your chest, it has a similar story. Eternal Insight is the best for damage but with no healing benefit, while Eternal Stats offers the second best for damage with good healing benefits. For legendaries, your best is Circle of Life and Death from the Stoleiden Generals. This increases the speed of your damage over time effects, or dots, by 25%, as well as your heal over time effects by 15%. On heavy ad fights, you may find Lycara's performs better, but it is much more unwieldy. Circle of Life and Death will always perform well. Last up for the gameplay is Covenants. There have been some balancing parts in recently, but it's likely that Nightfade will still continue to stay ahead, with Venthyrin and Necrolords behind, and Kyrian being the worst for damage. For all Covenants, you want to use your Covenant ability Conduit as a potency. Generally for DPS purposes, your best route does not involve a second potency, instead choosing a damaging proc. For Nightfade, your best DPS is Naya, finishing with her burrs, though this provides no healing benefit. For the Venthyr, you want Nadja, finishing off with her Dauntless Duelist, though Theotar's Tea Time can work well in group scenarios too, and it is a trait that assists with healing. For the Necrolords, you'll want Emily, though Hymir can work in some scenarios. Overall, your best soulbind can be found by Simin, which we will go over now. To begin with, download the Simcraft add-on, and in-game copy the text from the add-on. From there, head to Raid Bots and Top Gear, then paste the text into the first box. From there, you want to select any other gear, enchants, soulbinds before selecting the type of fight. Finally, you want a custom APL in the custom APL section below. You can find this APL linked in the description of this video, and you can watch a video here on why it is what it is. Lastly, press the Find Top Gear and you are away. If you want to find your best stats instead of the top gear, just go to Stat Weights on Raid Bots, paste in your character and the APL. The links to the add-on, Raid Bots and APL will all be in the description. Thank you very much for watching. If you are after other Resto Druid DPS guides and content, feel free to explore the rest of the channel. The rest of the guides will be in a playlist at the end. Now, it's time for you to take your Owlweaving for a spin.